That's not bad, huh?
This is today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
It's Terry Tuesday. Joining us is Terry Wolfe from FEMA Region 11, as I like to call it, up in Canada, out in Manitoba. I'm down here in somewhere in Mexico. Check out his website, wolfpox.com, winterchristian.substack.com. He's got a bunch of books. How's life, Terry? You feeling better?
I am feeling better. I recovered, but then right afterwards, you have this polar vortex hellscape that, most of America is feeling, actually. I saw the weather maps. It's going all the way down to Texas, and I'm guessing you're still in the safe zone, probably enjoying nice weather. But where I am, just yesterday, I was, I have to say, I'm so thankful that we do not operate off of electric here in Manitoba, because yesterday I had to try to help somebody replace their car battery on the side of a road. And I'm sitting out there, minus 30 degrees Celsius winds blowing in. We're taking turns sitting in my car trying to warm up so that, we can help this person. And very frustrating. My toes, I couldn't feel them by the end of it. But, that was a person's battery that shut off while they were driving. I guess they had the heater cranked all the way up, the headlights on because it's always dark, and they hadn't charged their battery enough, and their battery could die while they're driving. Now imagine a electric powered vehicle that has no ignition source, that's an alternator giving it power as it's driving. This is, I was just thinking what a nightmare it was. The electrical grid itself having to support all these people that would be constantly, even my home is natural gas, right? So the electrical grid in Canada would never be able to support the electric heating and vehicle charging that this big green revolution wants to have. And I would say this too, when I got home, I was out there for probably about an hour helping. And when I got home, I just had my phone in my insulated jacket pocket. I had this huge parka on, but I couldn't even charge it. The battery went to about 10%. It was fully charged when I went out there. Just from being in the cold, the battery almost died. And I tried to charge it, and I've never seen it before. The battery icon was blinking and just refused to charge because I guess it was ice cold. So I don't know what would happen if I had a car that's parked outside in this weather, a lithium ion battery like my phone has. I don't even imagine it would charge properly. So what a terrifying vision of they're trying to ban, gas powered cars in Canada in the next couple of years. Like, what is going to happen to us? It's basically a death sentence.
That reminds me of a time that I got stranded in the cold out in Mongolia. We were visiting nomads outside the village, and it was the same type of weather, and something broke down with the car. I don't know if it was a battery or what, but we were outside the village, literally in the middle of nowhere. But you could see from a very far distance the village, and the driver, I guess he went walking to the village, and we were out there for I don't know how long, hours upon hours. It was absolutely freezing cold. And I can still remember, I was like, when is this guy gonna get back? Like, and there were kids in the Jeep, and it was freezing. And then you brought to my attention this story from my hometown of Chicago, which I shared, where all these Tesla EVs are just dying. They're not working. The charging stations aren't working. I had someone in my Telegram, one of the people chat. I don't know if I believe this. They said they were somewhere in Finland or Norway, and then the Teslas there had no problem. I don't know, but how is it that, if you're saying in your Northern Europe you're not having problems, but in Chicago they're not working? Your further thoughts on what's transpiring with some of these EVs?
Yeah, it was an amazing video. This guy was commenting on how, and there was footage of it. You could see these parking lots with these super expensive Teslas, brand new, sitting there in a parking lot, snowed over and freezing, and sitting right next to the charging station. But the charging station itself isn't working because there was something about ice or it was damp or something like that. I suspect, based on what my phone was doing, that the batteries itself at some point, if it gets cold enough, just might not charge properly. And so people were abandoning their Teslas. Imagine doing that with such an expensive car in Chicago, of all places. You're just sitting there. You're just going to let your Tesla sit there. What if somebody just tows it away or just steals it or breaks into it or something like that? So it really is this vision where it's like one winter, one cold snap, and suddenly your vehicle that's supposed to keep you safe and warm and get you from place to place, instead, you're just leaving it there for anyone to come and access, and you have to get a ride from a friend or something because life goes on. It's not going to wait for you and your EV. It's terrifying, and it is actually making people, according to the story that I saw, reconsider what to do, because these cars were designed in LA. They were designed in places that don't have snow and cold like the rest of North America. So yeah, I'd be very curious if anyone has more examples of this. Send them our way. We love to see real world examples like this.
And yeah, speaking of cars in Chicago, again, the only time so far that I've stared down the barrel of a gun was in Chicago on the north side near my home. And there was another occasion, this was about 20 some years ago, where it was like the middle of the afternoon, maybe late afternoon. And in my parents, they had some junk minivan parked outside in front of the house. And there was a young teenager sitting at the wheel. Like, we're all minding our business. I was taking a nap, and someone started shouting, and they broke into our car, and they're sitting at the wheel. I don't know if they were trying to hot wire it or what. And then all of us, like 5 people, running out of the house screaming. That this teenager got out and ran down the alley. He could have been armed, but it was just, hey, that's Chicago. That's Chicago for you. So, all right, we're gonna jump to our headlines.
And action. The news.
TNT Radio News.
For TNT, this is James O'Neill. Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy has dropped out of the race for the White House after finishing fourth in the first GOP primary of 2024. A U.S. Navy SEAL team has boarded and seized a boat carrying what the U.S. Central Command suspects is a shipment of Iranian weapons intended for the Houthi rebel forces in Yemen. Tesla supercharging stations in Chicago have been overwhelmed due to the extreme cold, leading some residents to describe them as Tesla graveyards.
I was such a young age. Everything changed. My name is Chloe. When I was 13, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. When I found out, I just didn't know how to react. I felt like everything was just kind of closing in on me. It just became a routine. Dad's doing chemo. I'd come home from school, wait for Mum to finish work, and we'd go straight to the hospital, spend a few hours there, just draw. It was hard to navigate going to school, hundreds of kids, and I was the only one with a dying dad. He was diagnosed in March, and then he died in October. Towards the end, I heard about Canteen. It kind of felt nice to know that I had other people like me. They understood what I was going through, and we didn't even have to chat about cancer. In 2020, I became a youth ambassador, so I can help others the way they helped me. I've done so many things since I was 13. I've graduated high school, university, gotten my license, made a move across the country. Life now is just a whole lot more fun. Please give a gift today to support more young people like me experiencing cancer.
On air and on the app.
I listen on the app.
Stay up to date around the clock. I listen, therefore I know.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
All right, we're with Terry Wolfe of wolfpox.com. And just, Terry, on the EVs and the cold, what's sort of your takeaway? Because I just saw a clip of John Kerry at Davos talking about climate change and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I was rewatching it. It just seems like you can tell he doesn't even believe this. I mean, someone reported he's got a home right on the water somewhere. And just the way that he's talking about, we need everyone to come together on the climate and the carbon, all this and that. And it's like, he doesn't even believe it. And it's all about totalitarian world government. It's just about world government. And I don't know. I mean, what are they trying to do with this insanity? Like EVs and other things that are just destroying civilization.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, in the sense that it even how they get the lithium, every part of the process, it is more environmentally damaging than gas-powered cars to manufacture them. If something happens with the batteries, they become very dangerous. They can explode. There's footage all the time, if you bother to pay attention to it, of these things setting on fire, and nobody can put them out because it's not a normal fire. And yeah, all the studies, insurance rates are crazy because you can't repair these things. If they get damaged, you have to basically replace the entire battery all at once. If you get in a little fender bender, it is a disaster and it's a scam. So one side of it is this huge financial scam with carbon credits and why they're making them in the first place. And then obviously people who are on the government regulatory panels and Congress or whatever, they can invest in these companies and then pass regulation forcing people to buy them. And so then it's a quick way to, for these people to make their money. In the sense of the control grid, though, I mean, I think that's the biggest picture, highest level view of it, is to have electronic vehicles that are ultimately going to be driverless, or they are going to be so regulated on a digital level that it's basically a taxi service where you get into your own car and ask it to take you somewhere, and it tells you whether it is willing to or not. Like, I think it's about controlling people, and in the near term, maybe about creating such a headache that there's another solution yet that they're going to try to get to beyond that, so that personal vehicles, period, are considered to be unworkable, and then everything has to be public transport or something like that. But we know that they don't like they want 15-minute cities. They want us to not be able to travel freely. They're saying tourism is evil and everything is bad for the environment if it is related to personal freedom. So I think the EV disaster is a calculated level of incompetency that is just a common theme everywhere. And that's really the Orwellian, march that we're on here. Is not a perfect military police state where you are being watched and everything is monitored perfectly. It's more like everything just is regulated and taxed and made worse, just made into junk until the point where you end up in the same place with no freedoms and always being watched and nothing works properly, and except it's coming out of your pocket because it's still presented as a free market, and you have the choice. You can choose to walk somewhere or something like that.
Yeah, and it reminds me, there's this episode of Black Mirror where it's exactly that. I mean, I very much enjoyed that series in a weird way, very dystopian, but a lot of it's coming to pass. And there was one episode where there were like no cars. Everyone just hopped into an Uber and it took them everywhere. But then again, that becomes, they can limit your access to that if you are a dissident. And just today I drove a couple of hours to the conference here, speeding along. So much freedom, just speeding down the highway. I can go anywhere, wherever I want, and they want to take that away from us. And so to get your thoughts on what's happening in Canada, you've been in your feed sharing stuff about how the housing is some crazy clips that I saw of how the housing is getting so expensive. And we're seeing the same case everywhere. I had a guest on yesterday from Alaska, Leighton Radden, I think his name. He was saying the same thing. Like everyone I talk to everywhere, the housing is it's getting insane. Alaska, Canada, down here, Mexico, USA, Europe. No one can afford anything. It's just, then you have to wonder, like, well, then someone's doing this intentionally. No, what's happening up in Canada?
Yeah, it's true that it is bad everywhere, but Canada was never really hit by the 2008 housing crisis. We sort of just doubled down on keeping the prices high, and it's just been going crazy from there. So houses are 3 times overvalued easily. There's a giant bubble in Canada, and it's never really the correct time to say that the bubble's about to burst, right? Because the whole point of a bubble is those who benefit from it are trying to keep it for as long as possible and, play hot potato and keep the thing going. So, but what's happening right now that is interesting is that families are actually defaulting on their mortgages in a huge way across, especially in BC and in Ontario. And that's a huge red flag. Like if average people buy these homes for hundreds of, almost close to $1 million, and then, within a year or two before they even really get settled in, there's such a problem. They can't afford the housing payments, the insurance, all that kind of stuff, and they're defaulting, and then they're selling it for half that much, to the next person. So that's a huge red flag. So the bubble might actually be bursting. And then I would put on top of that, what made it more interesting for me as a story is that the Bank of Canada is doing a bunch of what they call securities repo operations. And what that is basically it's designed to inject liquidity into the banking system, which is exactly what happened in the 2008 financial crisis. There was a shortage of liquidity as these banks were all scrambling to shuffle the money around and cover their losses as these people are defaulting. So that's actually happening right now. The Bank of Canada is doing a lot of these repos, as they call it. And that's a sign internally that the Bank of Canada is worried that these banks are hitting the wall in terms of covering their debts and being able to operate properly because there's so much invested in real estate. It's just basically a replay of what happened in 2008 with the Lehman Brothers and all that.
We're just waiting for the next shoe to drop. And everywhere we read these types of situations, as you just described in Canada. I mean, I don't hear so much stuff like that here in Mexico. So it just seems more in the, say, Western world, Canada, USA, different parts of Europe. And so it's coming. My next hour guest is a financial expert, Bill Holter. And so, he'll be able, I think, to speak a bit more to that. And then, going to, I can't really think, is anything else interesting going on in Canada? I think that's about it. No, these days, not much else.
There's more. There's, the Canadian government said that it's going to try to work more closely with China. That was kind of a strange thing to see is apparently they're doubling down on trying to cooperate I don't know what it all means. But they're committed now to teaming up with them at the same time that Taiwan, just had their big election and got a candidate in there that was anti-Beijing. Canada seems to be doubling down on the idea that we need China to be our good friend here. They're one of the biggest factors driving up the cost of the housing in our country is the people fleeing China with millions of dollars that they can't spend there are trying to get into Canada. They buy up all the real estate for these ridiculous prices. No one even lives in these homes. They're just being bought by speculators from China. And, so there's a weird little circle going on there. Who knows? It's effectively a criminal laundering operation that the Canadian government is supporting. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else is going on right now in Canada.
Yeah, and turning back to the algorithm ghetto, there were some surprising pieces of news that came out. This one is in Italy. But again, yesterday I covered a lot of biometric update news. Ethiopia is going to make digital ID mandatory. Sierra Leone is encouraging everyone to get digital ID. Probably in 6 months, a year, Sierra Leone's going to be like, guess what? Digital ID is now mandatory. China is continuing with DNA swab tests, and LA is rolling out tens of thousands of they're plugging in private home, private business and public cameras into one system to monitor everyone. And you've got this story in Italy. It says Italy popular social media accounts to be treated as publishers face misinformation, hate speech restrictions in what can be seen as an open clampdown against the freedoms and rights of social media influencers. The Italian regulatory authority of Telecommunications has announced that people with a following exceeding 1 million will now be legally considered as producers of audiovisual content within the law, placing them on the same legal footing as publishers. And so, they say these people will then have to deal with misinformation or hate speech restrictions. And so, for me, it's just this continued criminalization of thought. Terry, maybe one day in the future, if you deny the weather or, you say something wrong about big pharma, you go straight to jail. Your further thoughts?
Yeah, this is the idea that social media and being popular on social media ends up putting you in this control position where you need to be regulated as if you're one of these publishers. Very much echoes to me what happened in Canada with Bill C-11, where they said that major users and major platforms, or even actually relatively small platforms that had a couple million people on them, would be regulated as if they were, by the same standards as the major broadcasters. And so, yeah, that was about trying to force Canadian content onto there, but then that means the content, nobody even knows what these things mean, right? So Google just gave up having a news feed for Canadians. If you try to use Google News, it's like in search engines and things like that I used in the past, they just now say, we don't have any news for you. You have to do a regular search engine search for a news item if you want to find it, because the restrictions they put in like this in Canada made it so that the platforms just said, we don't want to deal with it. So we'll just not give Canadians access to these news feed options. Here, it sounds like they are trying to regulate the hate speech and the opinions of people even more, which is even more dangerous potentially because it gets into the actual substance of the content. And so I'd be interested to see where that's going to go. Is people who are a popular content creator in Italy, suddenly you're getting thrown into some wagon and getting hauled off and questioned. It's thought police and it's free speech censorship. And, this is going to tie into basically the fear, I believe, around 2024 and the chaos that's happening. The more crazy things get, the more evil their schemes get, the more they need to censor us and control the conversation.
Yeah, but I guess I don't have to worry about that. I'm nowhere near the million mark. Although you were, slowly on your way on TikTok towards eventually getting 1 million. But what was the highest you had gotten on TikTok followers?
It was around 220,000, and I was getting a couple thousand followers every week. So yeah, it was growing fast, and I believe Bill C-11. I don't remember if this was taken out of the bill in the end, but there was the number 250,000, I believe, was the magic number somewhere in there that if you had that many users, you were going to fall under the bill or whatever. That was a couple years ago, but yeah, it was. I was getting up there. I might have been on the list at some point.
Hey, maybe someone did you a favor to get you out of harm's way. It's time for our break. Wolfpox.com is the website. The Substack is winterchristian.substack.com. We'll be right back.